Chapter 21, Repair. The days after the assault had a particular texture that Issei had not anticipated. He had prepared extensively for the assault itself and had given some thought to the immediate aftermath, the triage of damage and personnel and logistics that constituted the first 24 hours. What he had not fully accounted for was the longer aftermath, the week that followed, when the adrenaline had cleared and the damage assessment was complete and the base was in the slower, more demanding work of repair. Repair was different from preparation. Preparation had a forward momentum, a direction, a clearly held purpose. Repair was looking at what had been broken and deciding what it was supposed to have been and rebuilding it to that standard or better. It required a different quality of patience, one that did not have urgency's energy to run on. He found it useful to work with his hands when he could. Not the paperwork repair, not the coordination and logistics, but the physical work of the base's reconstruction, the clearing of debris, the carrying, the basic tasks that did not require commander-level judgment, and that let his mind process at the speed it needed while his body did something straightforward. The first morning after the assault he spent 3 hours helping the engineering team clear the rubble from the communications array site, and nobody said anything about it because it was useful and because the people who knew him well enough understood that this was how he worked. Belfast brought water at the 2-hour mark. She did not comment on what he was doing. She handed him the water with the directness of someone who had assessed the situation and made a decision, and he drank it, and she went back to her own work, which was everywhere and constant and done with the same quiet competence the base now ran on. The communications array repair was projected at 9 days. He pushed it to 7 by reassigning personnel he could spare from lower priority tasks, and by working the engineering team in overlapping shifts that kept the site active without exhausting any single crew. On the 5th day, Fleet Command sent a formal commendation for the engagement outcome and a query about the repair timeline. He responded that it would be complete in 2 days. It was complete in 1.5. Bismarck reviewed the repair completion report with the expression she wore for things that exceeded her expectations without entirely surprising her, which was a specific and slightly rarefied expression. Efficient, she said. The team was motivated. The team was well organized. Both, he said. She set the report down. Fleet Command will want a full debrief within the month. They are examining the engagement outcomes from all affected bases. How many bases were hit? 14. Across all 4 factions. He absorbed this. Outcomes. Variable. 3 bases sustained significant infrastructure loss. 2 lost command function for periods ranging from 40 minutes to 3 hours. She paused. This base sustained the least damage of the 14 and lost no command function at any point during the engagement. He was quiet for a moment. Not with pride exactly. With something that was about the people, the specific individuals who had done specific things that produced that outcome. The debrief, he said. I want to include the full senior staff. Not just my report. Their accounts, in their words, of what they did and what they saw. That is unusual for a command debrief. The outcomes were unusual. The process that produced them should be on record in the same level of detail. Bismarck looked at him steadily. You want the record to show that this was not a single commander's competence. I want the record to be accurate, he said. Which is the same thing. She nodded once. I will authorize it. He found Zuikaku in the simulation bay again, which no longer surprised him, but she was not running scenarios. She was sitting in the operator's chair with the display dark, which was new, which meant she was thinking rather than working. He knocked on the doorframe. She looked up. The eastern corridor took additional stress in the second phase, she said. Not beyond parameters. But close. I know. It's in the damage assessment. I want to rebuild the protocol with a wider stress margin. Not because it failed. Because the margin was narrower than I want it to be. Write up the revision, he said. I'll read it. She nodded. Then, can I ask you something? Yes. She looked at the dark display for a moment. After. When it was over. You went around. All night. I saw you from the steps. She paused. Were you checking on us or were you checking on yourself? He thought about this honestly, which she deserved. Both, he said. Checking on you because you deserved it, and because I needed to see with my own eyes that everyone was all right. Checking on myself because walking and seeing was the way I needed to process what had just happened. Both things were true at the same time. She looked at him. I've been thinking about that. About how two different motivations can produce the same right action. And whether that matters. Does it? In your thinking? I don't think so, she said. The action was the action. What produced it is interesting to understand, but the person who received it got the same thing regardless. That's, he said, more sophisticated than it sounds when you say it plainly. Most things are. She almost smiled again. It was becoming more frequent, that almost. I'm going to write the protocol revision. I'll look forward to reading it. She picked up her pen and her notepad and he left her to it, and as he walked back down the corridor he thought about what she had said, about two motivations and one action, and about how much of what he did here operated that way, the professional and the personal producing the same output, running alongside each other in a way that had stopped feeling like tension and started feeling like depth. Ayanami came to him on the fourth day of repair with a question he had not anticipated. The letters, she said? You write them to people you cannot reach. Yes. I would like to understand something about that practice. Not the content. The practice itself. He waited. When you write, she said, and you cannot send, and the person on the other side cannot respond, and you continue anyway, what sustains the practice? What makes it something other than speaking into silence? He considered this carefully. It was the real question, the one underneath the observable behavior, and it deserved a real answer. The person I'm writing to is real, he said. Not present, but real. Writing to them is a way of continuing the relationship in the only form available to me. I tell them what I would tell them if I could. I think about how they would respond. I carry on a conversation that is one-sided in form but not in my experience of it. You sustain them through the act of addressing them. Yes. And they sustain me through being worth addressing. The relationship stays alive because I keep treating it as alive. Ayanami was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I have someone I cannot reach. He waited again. He had learned, with her, that the space after an opening statement was not empty but occupied, and that filling it was the wrong move. Not a person, she said. A version of myself that I was before certain things happened. A way of being that I do not entirely know how to return to. A pause. I have been considering whether writing to that version would serve the same function. He absorbed this, the specificity and the courage of it. I think it might, he said. The act of articulating what you want to say to something real creates a different quality of thought than simply thinking. It requires you to form the words completely. The incompleteness that you might be comfortable with when thinking becomes visible when writing. So the writing serves the writer, she said, as much as the receiver. Yes. She was still for a moment. You are more considered about these things than your role requires. I have needed to be. The role I was given here required me to be, and the life I had before prepared me to be, and the two things together, he paused, made me more than either would have alone. She looked at him with her direct, careful attention. That is true of most of us here, she said. Yes, he agreed. It is. She left. He thought she might try the writing. He thought it would help her. He hoped she would tell him sometime, not the content, just whether it had helped, because he was genuinely curious and because caring about the answer was the kind of thing that made people real to each other. Chapter 22, The Debrief. Fleet Command sent 3 senior officers for the formal debrief, which arrived on a Tuesday in the 3rd week after the assault. The officers were professional, thorough, and carried with them the particular quality of people who have reviewed 11 other engagement reports from the same event, and were now processing the 12th with full attention because the 12th was the outlier. The lead officer was a woman named Nagato whose presence filled the room in the manner of someone who had earned the right to take up that much space and had never made a ceremony of it. She shook his hand at the pier with a directness that reminded him of enterprise and said, Your numbers are unusual. I know. We would like to understand why. That's why I asked for the full senior staff debrief. The numbers are a product of process. The process is the part worth understanding. She looked at him for a moment with evaluation in it, the kind that was not skeptical but was genuinely open, waiting for information. All right, she said. Show us the process. The debrief ran 2 full days. He had structured it the way he structured his staff meetings, not as a sequential report but as a reconstruction, each person contributing the part they had lived, the accounts building into a complete picture that no single report could have produced. Nagato and her colleagues listened with the quality of people encountering something they had not seen in 11 previous debriefs. Zuikaku walked through the Eastern Corridor Protocol with the precision she brought to everything technical, explaining not just what it did but why each decision had been made, and the Fleet Command officers asked questions that she answered without deference, directly, as someone who had built the thing and understood it completely. Ayanami described the redundancy sequencing in 7 minutes and answered 3 follow-up questions in 4 sentences each, and Nagato's expression shifted from attentive to something that was close to impressed, which was not a common expression on a face that had been doing this for a long time. Shikaku presented the records preservation protocol and the historical analysis she had developed, and one of the other Fleet Command officers, a quiet man who had said very little in 2 days, put down his pen and asked a question that ran for 6 minutes and contained more genuine intellectual engagement than most meetings Issei had sat in. Belfast presented the communications hub operations with the formal precision she used for official matters, and when she had finished, Nagato said, "You maintained 100% communications function through the engagement." Belfast said, "Yes." Nagato said, "Across the 14 affected bases, total communications function loss averaged 43 minutes. Belfast said, "I know. I read the preliminary report." Nagato said, "How?" Belfast said, "I anticipated the comparison would be relevant." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Nagato looked at Issei and said, "You built this." "We built this," he said, for the version of that sentence he had now said a number of times and would say again. Nagato looked around the table at the people sitting at it, each of them in their particular way, each of them having said their piece with exactly the competence and clarity that the engagement outcomes required. "Yes," she said. "I see that." A pause. "I would like to understand, specifically, the process by which this level of cross-functional coordination was developed in approximately 3 months," he told her. He told her about the structure of the first days, about the staff meetings and the records room and the harbor wall, and the dinner on day 3 of the joint exercise. He told her about what it meant to take people seriously as people rather than as functions and about what happened when you did that consistently, and what it built. He told her about the joint exercise and about Cleveland's question on the pier and Sheffield's 12 questions and about the engagement on day 14 that had told him the preparation was real. He told her about the letters in his inside pocket, which he had not planned to mention, and which surprised him by arriving in the account. Nagato looked at him when he said this. "The letters. People I left behind," he said. "I write to them. I tell them what I'm doing and what I'm learning. The act of writing keeps me continuous with who I was before this, which keeps me from becoming a different person in a way that I think would make me worse at this." A silence in the room. "That is," Nagato said and stopped. Then, "that is not a standard command practice." "No. But the outcome is standard. Commanders who lose track of what they care about make different decisions than commanders who don't. I have found a way to not lose track." Nagato looked at him for a long moment. He held the look without discomfort, because it was a fair look, honest and open, and he had learned not to be made smaller by people who looked carefully. "I would like to include a summary of the coordination development methodology in the Fleet Command findings," she said. "Not as a prescription. As a case study? I would ask that the summary attribute the methodology to the full team," he said. "Not to the commander." "That is," she said, and there was something in her voice that was not quite a smile but lived near one, consistent with everything else in this report. After the Fleet Command delegation left, Bismarck came to his office and sat in the chair across from his desk and looked at him with the expression that had evolved, over 4 months, from evaluation into something that had more depth to it without ever losing its precision. "Nagato," she said, "has been doing command debriefs for 12 years. I know. She told me, before she left, that this was the first debrief she had conducted where she genuinely did not want to leave." He was quiet. "That is not a thing Nagato says," Bismarck said. "I want you to understand the weight of it." "I understand it. You do not look as though you are letting it land." He thought about this. "I am letting it land." I'm also already thinking about the next thing that needs doing, which is not indifference to the compliment. It's just, he paused, searching for the accurate word, it's how I'm built. Bismarck was quiet for a moment. When I first reviewed your file, she said, I read a civilian with no military background, no formal training, no applicable experience, assigned to this base by a fleet command decision I did not understand. That was accurate. What was not in the file was what I have seen in 4 months. She paused. Command is not primarily a set of technical skills. Technical skills can be trained. Command is a quality of relationship with the people you are responsible for and with the work they are all doing together. That quality either exists, or it doesn't. Training does not create it. What creates it? I don't know, she said. I have been trying to understand it by watching you for 4 months and I still don't know. Which is unusual for me. He thought about Rias, who had the same quality, who had built the same thing in the occult research club from people who had no business fitting together, and who did. He thought about what she had told him once, that she thought the quality was about wanting, that the people who had it wanted the people around them to be well and capable and fully themselves, and that this wanting, when it was genuine and consistent, produced things that looked like leadership from the outside but felt like something else from the inside. I think, he said carefully, it comes from genuinely wanting the people around you to be well. Not as a means to an end. As its own thing. The wanting produces the attention produces the relationship produces the trust, and the trust is what everything else runs on. Bismarck was quiet for a long time. That is a simpler answer than I expected. Simple things are hard to do consistently, he said. That's why they look like more than they are. She stood. At the door she paused, which was a habit she shared with Zuikaku, the pause that meant there was one more thing. You are going to be asked to take on a larger role, she said. I do not know the specific form. I know it is coming. I wanted you to be prepared. He looked at her. Larger than this. Yes. All right, he said. She left. He sat for a moment with the idea, which was large and somewhat abstract and required the same patience as every other large and somewhat abstract thing, which was to set it in the place where things that required action rather than feeling went, and attend to it when it arrived in concrete form. He picked up his pen and went back to work. Chapter 23. What the Water Carries. The harbor wall in the evenings had become, over 4 months, a kind of shared space, which was something it had not been when he arrived. He had gone there alone in the beginning, and Enterprise had found him there, and then others had found him there or arrived independently, and now it was a place where people came when they needed the particular quality of open space and water, and the awareness that the world was larger than the current problem. He went there on a Thursday evening 3 weeks after the assault, after the Fleet Command debrief and after the repair completion report, and after the long Tuesday of paperwork that followed consequential things, and he went intending to be alone with the water for 20 minutes. Belfast was already there. She was standing at the wall with the evening light in her hair and her hands on the stone and her face toward the horizon, and she did not turn when he approached because she had heard him coming, and he came and stood beside her without asking because the space beside her had come, without ceremony or announcement, to feel like a place that was his. They stood in silence for a while. The harbor moved. The lights of the base came on one by one behind them. Nagato's debrief, Belfast said eventually. Yes. She asked me after the formal session whether I enjoyed my work. He looked at her. That's an unusual question for a Fleet Command debrief. Yes. I thought so as well. A pause. I told her yes. She asked what specifically I enjoyed, and I found that I had a great deal to say. What did you say? I said I enjoyed the complexity of it. The way maintaining a base's function required holding a great many things simultaneously, and in right relationship to each other. I said I found satisfaction in the precision of it. She paused. And then she asked if that was all, and another pause, this one longer, I said no. He waited. I said I found it meaningful to do work that mattered to people I respected. That the work had a different quality when the people you did it for were genuinely worth doing it for. She was looking at the horizon, not at him, which was how she said the things she meant most completely. She asked what had changed. I told her the commander had. The harbor wall was very quiet. Belfast, he said. I know, she said. I know what I am saying. I want to be sure I understand it correctly. She turned and looked at him then, which was the direct form of everything she had been saying in the indirect form for months, and her expression had all the qualities he had been learning to read, assembled now without the professional composure over them, just present. You are the reason the work has the quality it has, she said. Not as a commander. As a person. The way you treat people. The way you treat me. It changed what this place is. He felt the weight of this and held it carefully. You changed this place, he said. Before I arrived. The way you hold everything here, the way you care for the people in it, that was already real before I got here. What I did was see it. You were worth seeing before I arrived to see it. Something crossed her face that was not composed, and did not try to be. I know, he said more quietly. You know I know. We have both been knowing for a while. Yes, she said. We have. The harbor light was going amber, and the first stars were beginning, his stars, and the distance between them at the wall was the same small distance it had been in the kitchen, and on every other occasion when the distance had been what it was, and neither of them had reduced it because either of them had been quite ready. He was ready. Belfast, he said. Issei, she said. May I, he started, and she said yes before he had finished, and the harbor wall was where it had always been, and the water was moving and the stars were coming out, and he reached across the small distance, and she met him halfway, and it was the quietest and most complete thing that had happened in 4 months of consequential things, and neither of them said anything for a while because nothing needed to be said. The harbor lights came on. The bass settled into its evening rhythm around them. They stood at the wall together, which was different from standing at the wall beside each other, and the difference was the whole world. He told no one, and he did not need to, because the people who paid attention knew, and the people who paid attention in this space were most of them. Kaga said nothing. She did not need to. The morning after the harbor wall, she brought him his briefing materials with a quality in her expression that was the warmest thing he had seen from her, small and genuine, and accompanied by a single direct look that communicated everything and asked for nothing. Ayanami said nothing for 4 days and then said, on the 5th day, in passing, without introduction or context, it was visible before it was acknowledged. I want you to know that I think it is good. And then she continued down the corridor before he could respond, which was entirely consistent with how Ayanami operated when she had said something that mattered and did not want to make a ceremony of it. Shikaku said nothing directly and asked him 2 days later if he would like tea, which she had never previously offered to make, and when he said yes she made it with the particular deliberateness of someone for whom tea was a language, and it was very good tea, and he understood what it meant. Zuikaku said, on the 7th day, oh, so that's what that was, in the tone of someone reviewing evidence that had been in front of them and finally making the connection, and then she went back to her protocol revision without further comment, which was Zuikaku processing things at the speed she processed things, which was fast on tactics and somewhat slower on people, and that was fine. Enterprise said nothing. Enterprise looked at him on the morning of the 2nd day with the gray eyes that saw what was there and reported it accurately, and what she communicated in that look was a thing that could not have been put into words without losing something essential. He held it for a long time. Belfast herself was exactly who she had always been, which was the thing he had understood she would be, because the harbor wall had not changed her. It had permitted something that had already been there. She brought his tea with the same precision and care she had always brought it, she managed the base with the same complete competence, she was present at every meeting and every meal with the same quality of attention. The difference was not in what she did but in the quality of being known that accompanied it, the specific difference between doing something for someone and doing something for someone who knows you. It was, he thought, the best possible version of exactly what it was. Chapter 24, New Coordinates. The formal communication from Fleet Command arrived on a morning 6 weeks after the assault, and it was longer than the usual Fleet Command communications and carried the formal seal of the Combined Faction Council, which was a designation that appeared on documents of a particular level of significance. He read it twice. Then he went to find Bismarck. She was in the command center reviewing the weekly position reports, which was where she was most mornings, and she looked up when he came in and saw the document in his hand and said, "It arrived." "You knew." "I was informed that it was coming." I was not told the specific form. She paused. What form does it take? He set the document on the table between them. She read it. She read it with the thoroughness she brought to everything important, and when she set it down her expression had the quality of someone whose hypothesis has been confirmed in a specific and significant way. Joint Coordination Command, she said. The Combined Faction Council has established a new coordination structure in response to the multi-base assault pattern. A joint command office that operates across all 4 factions, responsible for cross-faction engagement protocols and readiness standards. He paused. They have offered me the command. Bismarck was quiet. It would mean leaving this base, he said. Yes. It would mean a different kind of work. Less direct. More structural. Yes. I have not decided. She looked at him. What makes you hesitate? He had been thinking about this since he read the document, turning it over with the same careful attention he gave everything that mattered. This base, he said. The people here. What we built. I am aware that the reason Fleet Command is offering me this role is because of what happened here. But taking the role means leaving the thing that qualified me for it. The base would continue, Bismarck said. The people here are what they are independent of your presence. I know. That is partly why it's difficult. They don't need me. They did need me, in the specific way that the beginning requires, but that is done. They are built. Then what holds you? He was honest. Personal things. I would be asking people I care about to make choices I did not plan to ask them to make. Bismarck was quiet for a moment. Have you asked them? Not yet. Then you do not know the answer to the question you are deciding on their behalf. He looked at her. She was, as she had been from the beginning, accurate. No, he said. I don't. Then ask, she said simply. You have built relationships here that are strong enough to hold a direct question. Use them. He told Enterprise first, which felt correct in the same way that certain things simply felt correct, because Enterprise had been there from the beginning and deserved the beginning of this too. She listened to the full communication. She asked 2 questions, both of them structural and forward-looking, which was how she engaged with large things. Then she was quiet. You should take it, she said. You think. I think the work you did here prepared you for exactly this. And I think the fact that you are hesitating because of the people here rather than because of the scope of the role is evidence that you will do the role well. How? Because the role requires someone who understands that the people are the work. Not the protocols, not the structure. The people. She paused. You understand that. You have demonstrated that you understand it in a way that changes outcomes. That understanding needs to operate at a larger scale. And this base is what it is, she said. That does not go away when you do. He was quiet for a moment. Enterprise. If I take this role, will you be part of it? She looked at him. Is that an official request? It is a personal one first. Official second. A pause that had a quality in it. Something that was for her what the harbor wall had been for Belfast. The permitting of something that had been present. Yes, she said. I will be part of it. He told the senior staff together, in the conference room where they had met so many times over the past 4 months. And he told them directly and completely. The offer and his hesitation and the question he was genuinely asking them. The silence after was different from other silences in that room. This one had the quality of people turning something over, not performing consideration but actually doing it. Zirkaku spoke first. The Joint Coordination Command. The cross-faction engagement protocols. That's the thing we built here, scaled up. Yes. And you're the reason we built it. We're the reason. She gave him the look that meant she was not arguing the attribution today. You should take it. She said it with the direct energy of someone who had reached a conclusion and was not going to dress it up. And I want to be assigned to it. Formally. If that's a possibility. He had not expected that. He absorbed it. Shukaka said, with the measured precision she brought to her most important statements. I would also ask to be considered. The historical and intelligence analysis function that a cross-faction command would require is work I believe I could do well. And a pause, the slight pause that meant she was permitting herself something. I have found that I work well in proximity to this command style. Kaga said, my unit's readiness is at the highest level it has been. A transfer at this point would not harm the base. I would be willing to consult on cross-faction training protocol development, if that would be useful. Ayanami said nothing, which he had learned to read. He looked at her. I will go where I am most useful, she said. I believe that is with you. She said it without self-consciousness, as a fact of the same order as any other fact she stated, and it landed exactly as she had intended it to, simply and completely. He looked at Belfast. She met his look with the quality that was hers, composed and present, and underneath the composure, known. I manage bases, she said. That is what I do. I can manage this base, or I can manage whatever base a joint coordination command requires. The work is the work. A pause. Where the work takes me is a separate question from the work itself. He understood the distinction she was drawing, and he understood what she was leaving unsaid, which was that the separate question had an answer she had already reached and was not going to say in a staff meeting. I will give Fleet Command my answer by Friday, he said. And whatever the structure of what comes next, I will not make decisions about any of you without asking you. That is a promise. The room had the quality of something understood. Not easy, not without the weight of what was being discussed, but real and forward-facing in the way that the things built here had always been forward-facing. Chapter 25, What Remains. He wrote the letter on a Thursday evening, the night before he sent his answer to Fleet Command. He wrote it differently than the others. The others had been addressed to specific people, had told specific people specific things, had been the kind of writing that was about relationship and continuity. This letter was addressed to all of them, together, which he had not done before and which felt like the right form for what he needed to say. He told them, I have been here 5 months. I arrived on a beach without shoes under wrong stars, and I have spent 5 months building something in a world I did not choose. Tomorrow I accept a role that will ask me to do more of that building at a larger scale, and I am accepting it because the people I have built it with are worth doing more for, and because the work is worth doing, and because you taught me, all of you, that work worth doing is the kind you do even when it is harder than you expected. He told them, the relationships here have the same quality as the relationships there. I do not mean they are replacements. I mean the quality of being known and knowing, of choosing people and being chosen back, of building something that has no blueprint except the genuine attention you give to the people in it. That quality is the same in both worlds, and I think it might be the most important thing there is. He told Rias, you would like them. All of them. You would find Enterprise's directness professionally useful and personally interesting. You would recognize immediately what Belfast does and why it is extraordinary. You would have a conversation with Bismarck that would last for 4 hours and leave both of you changed. You would tell Zuikika things that nobody else would be honest enough to tell her, and she would argue with you for 45 minutes and then go prove you right. You would sit with Shikaku in a records room and you would both be reading, and it would be one of the best afternoons either of you had ever had. He told Asia, there is a person here who has the same quality you have, the quality of being present without insisting on it, who communicates more in 7 words than most people communicate in paragraphs. Her name is Ayanami, and she is quietly one of the most remarkable people I have ever known. And I think you would understand each other immediately in the way that people who speak the same language always do even when they have never met. He told Aquino, the thing you told me once about people who see things and choose not to say them until the right moment. I understand it differently now than I did when you said it. I thought it was about power. It is actually about care. Seeing correctly and choosing the right moment to share what you see is an act of care for the person you are seeing. Thank you for showing me what that looked like before I had to figure it out myself. He told Kaneko, the kitchen. He told her again. He wanted the record of it to be in more than one letter, because it was the kind of thing that deserved to be remembered in full. The morning light and the miso soup and the specific way that being alongside someone you care about in an ordinary moment is sometimes the most extraordinary thing that happens in a day. He told Yuto, I have found the second version of the thing you described once as the thing that happens when you stop trying to be worthy of people and start being with them. The first version was at Ko. This is the second version. I think there may be a third version someday, and a fourth, and I think each version teaches you something that makes the next one possible. If that is what life is, then life is remarkable and I am grateful for all of it. He told them all, I miss you. I will always miss you. I have learned to carry the missing alongside everything else, and it does not get lighter but I get stronger, which amounts to the same thing. He told them, I am well. I am doing work that matters with people who are real to me. I am becoming someone I did not know I could be, and the becoming is built on what you made of me, and I will never stop being grateful for that. He told them, I love you. All of you. In all the specific ways that all of you deserve, which are different and complete and none of them reducible to any other. He folded the letter and put it with the others. He held the letters for a moment, the full weight of them, the months of words that had no destination but had never been without purpose. Then he put them back in the inside pocket of the commander's coat, and stood up and went to the window. The harbor was calm. The lights of the base were on. His stars were visible above the water, steady and present, and somewhere out there, past the horizon and the impossible distance, were the people he had ridden to, living their lives in the world he had come from, not knowing and yet, he believed, somehow aware in the way that people who have genuinely loved each other are sometimes aware across distances that should make awareness impossible. He sent the acceptance to Fleet Command on Friday morning. By Friday afternoon the base had, in its way, already begun the process of becoming what it was going to be next, which was the nature of living things, which did not wait for permission to continue. He found Belfast in the kitchen, which was where she was. He came and stood in the doorway the way he had stood in the doorway on the morning after the assault, and she turned and looked at him with the expression that was hers and that he had learned to read as fluently as any language he had ever known. You sent it, she said. Yes. She turned back to what she was doing and he came into the kitchen and stood beside her at the counter, close enough that the kitchen's particular warmth was shared between them. I meant what I said in the staff meeting, she said. The work is the work. I can do it here or elsewhere. The base will be well regardless. I know. What I did not say in the staff meeting, she said, with the precision she used for everything that mattered most, is that elsewhere is where I intend to be. If you will have me. He looked at her. She was looking at the counter with the careful attention of someone who had said something important, and was giving the other person the courtesy of not watching them react. Belfast, he said. She looked up. There is nowhere I am going that I would want to go without you. The kitchen was quiet. Through the window the base was doing what bases did in the afternoons, the ordinary purposeful movement of people who had work and were doing it. The harbor was visible at the edge of the window, blue and calm. All right, she said. All right, he agreed. She went back to her work and he went back to his. Because that was what they both were and both of them being fully themselves was part of what this was. And the kitchen had the particular quality of a space that held something real without making a display of it, the warmth and the smell of food and the two people in it doing ordinary things in the ordinary afternoon as though the ordinary afternoon were the most important thing in the world. It was. He did his last rounds of the base on a Sunday evening, a week before the transition, not because it was the last time but because he understood that last times deserved to be walked through with full attention rather than glanced at in passing. The base was what it had become. The harbor held its ships in the familiar patterns. The simulation bay had its lights on because Zeikaku was in it, which was where Zeikaku would be until she wasn't. The records room held its patient shelves and, probably, shukaku, which it often did in the evenings. The training yard was clean and quiet, Kaga's meticulous attention visible in the state of the surface. The eastern pier was where it always was. He walked the full circuit. He went to all the places where he had stood alongside people and had conversations that had changed the shape of things. He let each place be what it was, the record of what had happened there accumulated in the way that places accumulated the events of the people who occupied them. He walked the harbor wall last. Enterprise was there. He came and stood beside her, and they looked at the water in the comfortable way that had been established over 5 months of harbor wall evenings, the silence that did not need filling. How does it feel? She said eventually. Correct, he said. Like the right next thing. Are you ready? I was ready before I knew I was. That seems to be how it works. Yes, she said. It does. The harbor moved in the evening light. Somewhere behind them the base was alive with its ordinary sounds, and ahead of them the water extended to the horizon and beyond, to wherever what came next was waiting. Enterprise, he said. Issei. Thank you? For the morning on the beach. I know I have said it before. You can say it again, she said. Thank you for the morning on the beach. And for everything after. For showing me what this place was capable of before I knew. For trusting me with it. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had the quality underneath it that she allowed when the moment was genuine. You came to a strange shore and you stayed upright and you built something worth building. I trusted you with it because you earned the trust. That is not a gift. That is accurate assessment. Even accurate assessments can be generous in their timing, he said. Perhaps, she said. But I do not do generosity with assessments. He almost laughed. He let himself. No, he said. You don't. They stood at the harbor wall in the evening, the stars coming out above them, the same stars that had been wrong once and were his now, and the harbor was calm and the base was real and everything that had happened here was the foundation of everything that was going to happen next, and he carried all of it with him, the letters in his pocket, and the people around him and the people he carried from before, all of it held, all of it his. All of it worth every cost. He was here. He was, in every way that mattered, home. The tide moved in the harbor. The stars held steady. And in the morning there would be work, the good kind, the kind worth doing, the kind that was built on everything that had brought him here and pointed toward everything still to come. He let the evening be the evening. He let it be enough. He let it be everything. Chapter 26. Arrival. The Joint Coordination Command headquarters was located at a place called Anchor Point, which was not the name on any official map but was what the personnel who worked there had been calling it for long enough that the name had become real. It occupied a peninsula at the edge of navigable water, a sprawling complex of buildings that had been constructed in 3 distinct phases and showed it, the oldest section stone and formal, the middle section functional and slightly exhausted looking, the newest section clean and deliberate, and smelling of fresh concrete. Issei arrived on a Tuesday in late autumn with Enterprise at his right and Belfast at his left, and Zikaku, Shikaku, Ayanami, and Kaga arranged behind them with the particular quality of people who had transferred together and were therefore already something, already a unit with a history and a shorthand and a set of established understandings that the new space had not yet earned. He stood at the entrance for a moment, and looked at the building and felt the particular sensation of a beginning, which he now recognized from enough experience to know that it always felt like this, always had the quality of standing at the edge of something large and slightly opaque, unable to see the interior until you were in it. He went in. The chief administrator of Anchor Point was a compact, precise woman named Hood who had been managing the facility since before the Joint Coordination Command existed and who had therefore, in the way of people who outlast the roles assigned to them, become the institutional memory of a place that had not yet accumulated enough history to need one. She met them at the entrance with the efficiency of someone who had done a great many orientations and had refined the process to its essential components. She shook his hand and said, "Commander Haida, we have been expecting you since before we knew your name." He looked at her. "I'm not sure I understand that. The role has been waiting for the right person for 18 months, she said. Fleet Command kept finding reasons the candidates were not quite right. Then you happened and the reason stopped. She said this without sentimentality, as a plain account of institutional history. Welcome to Anchor Point. Thank you. He paused. The role has been waiting 18 months. Yes. Then there are 18 months of deferred problems. Hood looked at him with an expression that was, for the first time, not entirely administrative. Yes, she said. There are. I would like a full briefing on all of them before I look at anything else. A pause. That is not the standard orientation sequence. I know. I would like to do it first anyway. Hood looked at him for a moment longer and then said, I will have the files ready by this afternoon. Something in her bearing shifted, not warmth exactly but a slight recalibration of expectation. The orientation can follow. Thank you. He felt Enterprise beside him with the quality of someone who was not going to say anything but whose presence communicated something along the lines of, yes, exactly, this is what I told Fleet Command about. The 18 months of deferred problems were, on examination, 9 actual problems and 9 problems that had become problems because no one had addressed the actual problems, which was a pattern he recognized from the operational history reading he had done at Ironblood Anchorage, and which always produced the same result. The secondary problems were louder, but the primary ones were more consequential. He worked through them in the order of consequence rather than the order of loudness, which was not how the file had been organized but was the order he reordered it into before he started reading. It took 2 full days to map the landscape completely. On the 3rd day he called the first staff meeting. Anchor Point's existing staff was larger than Ironblood Anchorage's had been, and more diverse in its composition, and more aware of its own diversity in a way that had produced, over the 18 months without a permanent command, a set of careful interpersonal arrangements that were professionally functional and genuinely fragile. He could see the fragility in the way people sat at the table, the particular distance between certain pairs, the eye contact that happened and the eye contact that was deliberate avoided, the quality of a group that had found a workable equilibrium and was not confident that a new variable would maintain it. He was the new variable. He introduced himself without ceremony. He said his name and where he had come from and what he had done there, and what he intended to do here, in plain language, without the formal register of official introduction. He said, I have a set of things I want to accomplish and a way I prefer to work, and I am going to tell you both now because I find that people do better when they know what they are working with. He saw the quality of attention in the room shift, the slight recalibration of people who had been prepared for something and found something different. He said, I want to build something here that holds under real conditions. I have done it once and I know what it requires. It requires people who are willing to be honest and to receive honesty, who will bring problems early rather than late, and who will trust that the room will take their work seriously. I will take your work seriously. I asked the same in return. He said, I have brought people with me from my previous command. They are not a separate unit, and they are not a hierarchy within this staff. They are people I know well and trust, which means they can serve as bridges between what I know and what I do not yet know about this place. Use them for that. Then he said, tell me what I need to know. Not what you think I want to hear. What I need to know. The silence that followed was the same quality as the silence at Ironblood Anchorage on the first day, the particular silence of people deciding whether the offer was genuine. He had learned to wait it out. A tall woman at the end of the table with the insignia of the Ironblood faction said, with a careful precision that suggested she had been preparing this statement for some time, the cross-faction liaison structure that was established 8 months ago has a fundamental design flaw that everyone in this room has identified and no one has been positioned to correct. Tell me the flaw, he said. She told him. It took 12 minutes and it was completely accurate. When she finished he nodded and wrote 3 things in his notes and said, What is your name? Rune. Rune. You are now the lead on correcting that design flaw. I want a proposed revision in 2 weeks. She blinked. I am not senior enough to hold that designation. You identified the problem with more clarity and specificity than anyone else in this room. Senior enough. He paused. Unless someone else wants to contest the analysis. No one contested the analysis. 2 weeks, he said. Bring me your revision. It was, he thought, a reasonable beginning. Belfast established herself in the facility's kitchen and operations center with the focused efficiency of someone who had done this before and knew exactly what it required. By the end of the first week, the facility's logistical functions were running at a quality that Hood described, in her precise administrative language, as notably improved, and that Issei experienced as the particular relief of knowing that the base of operations was held by someone who understood what holding meant. He found her in the operations center on the 5th evening, after the rest of the facility had gone to its late-night reduced staffing, reviewing supply chain documentation with the patience she brought to everything that required it. Belfast. She looked up. The operations center was quiet around them, the facility's systems running their automated cycles, the kind of quiet that existed at the intersection of work completed and work not yet begun. You should rest, she said, which was what she said. And he said, so should you, which was what he said, and they had been having this exchange long enough that it had become a kind of greeting, the particular greeting of 2 people who shared the habit of working past the point where rest would have been prudent. He sat down at the table across from her documentation. How is it? The supply chain has 3 points of structural inefficiency that will require negotiation with the faction logistics coordinators to correct. The kitchen is functional. The communication systems are maintained adequately but not well. She paused. The people are more careful than they need to be. Careful. With each other. With you. With the new arrivals from Iron Lud. She set down the documentation. They have been without a settled command for 18 months. They have learned to manage without certainty, which means they have learned to commit to very little, because commitment in an uncertain environment has costs that exceed its benefits. He thought about this. The fragile equilibrium. Yes. It is not distrust, precisely. It is the behavior produced by a long period where trust was not a safe investment. And the correction. Time, she said. And consistency. The same qualities you used before. She paused. It will take longer here because the habits are more established. But the process is the same. You have been observing this since we arrived. I observe everything, she said, which was true and which she said without any particular weight, as a simple fact. Tell me what you see, he said. Everything. Not just the systems. The people. She looked at him. In her expression was the thing that was hers, the quality that was warmth in her particular form, present and steady. Yes, she said. I will. They stayed in the operations center for another hour, Belfast telling him what she had seen and him listening with the complete attention she always received when she spoke, and at the end of it he had a map of the facility's human terrain that no briefing document had provided and that would shape everything that followed. Chapter 27. The Shape of New Things. Rune delivered her revised liaison structure in 11 days rather than 14, which told him something about her that the precision of her original analysis had already suggested. He read it the morning it arrived, completely, in the first hour of the day before his scheduled meetings, and by the time Rune appeared at his office door at the agreed time he had 3 observations and 7 questions. She came prepared with answers to the questions she had anticipated and the quality of someone who had thought carefully about the ones she hadn't. The 3 observations were new to her. She considered each of them with the focused attention of someone who was genuinely processing rather than performing, and after the 3rd one she said, "That changes the implementation sequence." Yes. The whole 2nd phase needs to be reordered. The logic is in the 3rd observation. If you agree with the logic. She looked at the document, and at his notes beside it with the expression of someone finding something they had been close to and not quite reached. I agree with the logic, she said. I'm annoyed I didn't see it. You built a structure that made the logic visible when examined from a different angle. That is the work I asked you to do. The 2nd angle is what I'm for. She looked at him with an expression he recognized, the specific expression of someone encountering a style of leadership they had not previously experienced, and were deciding what to make of it. He had seen it at Iron Blood Anchorage, at the joint exercise, at Anchor Point on the first day. It was always the same recalibration, and it always required the same response, which was to continue being consistent until the recalibration settled. I'll revise the implementation sequence, she said. Good. And Rune, Commander, you have been here for 14 months. You identified an institutional problem that the previous structure failed to correct. What else have you been sitting on? A pause. The question had landed the way a direct question landed when someone had been waiting for it to be asked. Several things, she said. Write them down. All of them. I want the full list, not the curated one. Give it to me by Friday. She left. He suspected the list would be long, and that most of it would be accurate, and that Anchor Point had been waiting for someone to ask for it for approximately 14 months. He was looking forward to reading it. Zuikaku had, by the end of the 2nd week, established herself in the Tactical Operations Center with the possessive thoroughness of someone who had decided this was her space and was going to organize it to the standard it deserved. The existing tactical staff received this with a mixture of territorial wariness and reluctant respect, the wariness because she had arrived with clear expertise and a directness that did not accommodate inefficiency, and the respect because the directness was accompanied by a quality they apparently had not anticipated, which was that she explained her reasoning. She had told him about this at the end of the 2nd week during a catch-up conversation that had developed, over the past months, into something he valued as much as his formal briefings. They expected me to just implement, she said. When I explained why a particular protocol change was better than the existing one, they stopped resisting. "You've learned something," he said. "I've always known how to explain my reasoning. I used to save it for people I thought had earned it. And now I explain it to everyone first. It's faster. The pushback that comes from not understanding why is slower than the time it takes to explain why." He thought about the conversation on the steps at Ironblood Anchorage, about 2 motivations and 1 action. "That's the operational version of something you worked out in a harder context." She was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," she said. "It is. How does it feel to apply it?" "Better than I expected," she said, with the honesty she always brought when she said things she had not planned to say. "It turns out that people are more useful when they understand why they are doing something. Which is obvious when you say it out loud. Most important things are. You keep saying that. It keeps being true." She almost smiled. "The Eastern Channel Tactical Protocols. I want to rebuild them from the ground up. The existing versions were designed for a single faction operational context. They don't account for joint asset coordination at all." "Build the framework," he said. "I'll read it. Bring in 1 analyst from each faction, people who know the existing protocols, and have them identify what can't be removed. Build around that. You want me to manage a 4-faction working group. You have done it before. You are better at it than you were." She looked at him steadily. "That is either a compliment or a very efficient delegation strategy." "Both," he said. "They are not mutually exclusive." She left with the qualities she had developed over 5 months of working in close proximity to him, the stride that was entirely hers, competent and claimed and not asking permission for either. Shikaku established herself in the intelligence and records division with the quiet authority of someone who had found her precise context. The existing record structure at Anchor Point was, in her assessment, which she delivered to him in a 4-page summary on the 8th day, functional at the level of data storage and significantly deficient at the level of analytical integration. He read the 4 pages twice. "The analytical integration problem," he said. "How long has it existed?" "Based on the structural evidence in the existing records, approximately 2 years. It predates the period without settled command, so it has never been addressed. It has been noted in 3 separate internal assessments, and not acted upon in any of them." He looked at the 4th page, which contained Shikaku's proposed integration framework. It was elegant in the way that good solutions were elegant, minimal and sufficient, and built from careful understanding of what the problem actually was rather than what it appeared to be. "This is the solution," he said. "It is a proposed solution. There are implementation variables I have not yet assessed." "This is the solution," he said again. "The implementation variables will be addressable. Begin." She looked at him with the expression she wore when she was receiving something she had not expected to receive this quickly. "I will need access to the classified intelligence archive. You will have it by tomorrow morning, and cooperation from the faction intelligence liaisons. I will speak with them today." She was quiet for a moment. "You are moving quickly. The problem has existed for 2 years," he said. "The time for patience about its existence has passed. The time for patience about the implementation is when the implementation begins." Something in her expression settled in the way it had settled, at Ironblood Anchorage, when things were where they should be. "Understood," she said. "Shikaku." "Yes. How is Zikaku?" A pause that was the particular pause of a sister assessing. "She is well. She is where she is most herself. She is," a slight pause, "less alone with it than she was." "Good." "Yes," she said, and left. Ayanami had, by the end of the first week, mapped the human geography of Anchor Point in a way that would have taken a less careful observer a month. She brought him the map on a Wednesday evening, not literally, she did not use documents for things like this, but in the form of a quiet 15-minute conversation that contained more essential information than most formal briefings. She told him about the careful interpersonal arrangements, confirming what Belfast had observed from a different angle and adding the specific texture of individual dynamics. She told him about the 2 factions whose liaison officers had a productive working relationship built on mutual respect, and about the 2 whose liaison officers had a working relationship built on mutual wariness of a more complicated kind. She told him about the senior Sakura intelligence analyst who had been the de facto institutional memory for the past 18 months, and who was therefore both invaluable and exhausted, and who would need specific acknowledgement before she could trust that the acknowledgement would continue. He listened to all of it. "You have been writing," she said at the end. "The letters." "Yes. More frequently. New place. New beginning. There is more to report." She was quiet for a moment. "I tried the writing," she said. "The kind you described. To the earlier version of myself." He waited. "It was useful," she said. "More than I expected." A pause. "The earlier version had things to say that I did not know she had been holding. The writing gave them a form." "What did she say?" "That she was frightened for a long time and did not have the language for it. And that the fear was reasonable given the circumstances and was not a failure." Ayanami was very still. "That is not something I had previously permitted myself to understand." "I am glad the writing helped," he said. "Yes." She looked at him with the direct attention that was her version of the same quality Belfast communicated differently, the quality of being fully present to a person. "You have been," she said, choosing words with her usual care, "more than a commander to the people from iron blood. I want to say that plainly because I think precise acknowledgments have value." He held this carefully, the way she had offered it, precisely and without decoration. "Thank you," he said. "Precisely." She nodded and left, and he sat for a moment in the quiet of his office in the new place with the weight and gift of what she had said, and then he picked up his pen and wrote it down, not in the letters but in a note to himself, because some things deserve to be kept in more than one place. Chapter 28 Friction. The first real difficulty at Anchor Point arrived on the 19th day in the form of a formal complaint lodged through the Eagle Union faction liaison about the pace of the liaison structure reform. He read the complaint carefully. It was not unreasonable. The existing liaison structure, flawed as it was, had produced a stable if inefficient working equilibrium, and the reform Rune was implementing would disrupt that equilibrium before the improved structure was fully operational. The Eagle Union liaison, whose name was a formal title he was still learning to match to a face, was concerned that the disruption window created a coordination gap. The concern was legitimate. He had not sufficiently accounted for the transition period. He called a meeting that afternoon that included Rune, the Eagle Union liaison, and the liaisons from the other three factions, because if one faction had the concern the others likely had versions of it, and addressing them sequentially was slower and less productive than addressing them together. He began the meeting by saying, "The concern in the formal complaint is valid and I should have built a better transition protocol into the reform plan. That is my error and I am correcting it now." Then he looked at the room. "What I need from this meeting is the specific coordination functions that cannot be interrupted during the reform transition. Tell me what they are and we will build the transition protocol around them." The Eagle Union liaison, who had clearly prepared for a defensive meeting and found an accountable one, recalibrated visibly. She said, "The Northern Corridor Patrol coordination cannot be interrupted for any period longer than 48 hours without creating a coverage gap. That is the primary constraint." He wrote it down. "What else?" he said. The other liaisons told him. It took an hour and produced a list of 7 non-interruptible functions and 4 functions that could tolerate a transition gap of up to 1 week. He and Rune spent the following 2 hours rebuilding the implementation sequence around those constraints. At the end of it Rune said quietly, so that only he could hear, "I should have done this before I started. The reform was correct. The sequencing needed adjustment. That is not the same as the reform being wrong. I didn't consult the people who would be affected by the transition." "No," he said. "But you corrected it when it was raised. The correction matters." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't let people stay in the failure. The failure is information. What you do with it is the work." She looked at him. "That's from somewhere." "It's something I worked out," he said. "From watching how things went when people did and didn't act on it." She nodded, the short decisive nod. "The revised sequence will be ready tomorrow." "Good." She left. The Eagle Union liaison, who was still packing her materials on the other side of the room, looked up and said, without particular ceremony, "That was a better meeting than I expected." "The concern was legitimate," he said. "Legitimate concerns deserve to be heard and addressed." She looked at him with the evaluating quality he was beginning to recognize as her standard mode of engagement. "The previous acting commander would have defended the original plan," she said. The previous acting commander was working without the information the complaint contained. I had the information. Defending the plan after receiving it would have been incorrect. A pause. My name is Cleveland, she said, and he registered that it was not the same Cleveland from the joint exercise, that it was a coincidence of name that was mildly startling, and that the quality she carried was similar enough that the coincidence was not entirely without meaning. I am the Eagle Union faction liaison, Commander Hayadu, he said. I look forward to working with you. Yes, she said, in the tone of someone updating an assessment. I think you might be right about that. The second difficulty was more personal and arrived on the 23rd day in the form of a late evening meeting that Kaga requested and that she had clearly been deciding whether to request for some time. The training protocols at Anchor Point, she said, when they were settled in his office with the late-night quiet of the facility around them. They are adequate. I know. My standard is not adequate. I know that too. She looked at him steadily. What I am going to tell you is not a complaint. It is information I think you should have. Tell me. The training unit here is competent in its individual components. As a joint unit, as a formation that needs to function across faction lines under real conditions, it is not what it needs to be. The joint exercise at Iron Blood Anchorage produced a different quality of cross-faction readiness because the people were in sustained close contact with each other's methods. Here, the factions train separately and coordinate at the level of protocols rather than at the level of knowing how the person beside you makes decisions. What do you need to change that? Authorization to restructure the joint training schedule. The faction training leads will resist because restructuring requires giving up individual faction training time for joint sessions, and individual faction training time is treated as a protected resource. You have the authorization, he said. I will speak with the faction training leads tomorrow, and they will know it. The resistance will not end with the authorization, she said. It will become more specific. I know. When it becomes specific, bring it to me. We will address the specific versions. Kaga was quiet for a moment. She had the particular stillness of someone absorbing an outcome they had not been entirely certain of. You have a great deal of confidence in your ability to address resistance, she said. I have evidence that it's addressable, he said. I built the same thing from a harder starting position at Iron Blood Anchorage. The starting position here is better. The starting position here is complicated by 18 months of ungoverned habit. Yes, he said. That is a real complication. It is not an insurmountable one. She looked at him with the amber eyes that had assessed him since the morning on the forest path, nearly 6 months ago, when he had stepped out with his hands up and his voice steady. No, she agreed. It is not. Kaga. Yes. How are you? Not the training protocols. You. A pause of the kind that meant the question had mattered. I am finding my work here significant, she said. I am also finding that I miss what was familiar about the previous place. That is, he said, entirely reasonable. I know, she said. I am permitting myself to find it reasonable, which is a different practice than I previously maintained. He thought about what Ayanami had said about the earlier version of herself and about the fear that was reasonable and had not been permitted to be. That practice is worth maintaining, he said. Yes, she said. I believe it is. The third difficulty was the one he had not anticipated, and it arrived on the 31st day in a form that had nothing to do with the facility's structure and everything to do with him. He was in the records room, which was where he went when he needed to think in the way that required a particular kind of quiet, and he was not reading anything. He was sitting at the table with the familiar smell of paper around him and the weight of a month of sustained effort settled in his body, and he was, for the first time since arriving at Anchor Point, not thinking about the work. He was thinking about the beach, not with the anxiety that the memory had carried in the early weeks at Iron Blood Anchorage, the disorientation and the strangeness and the wrong stars. He was thinking about it with a quality that was closer to wonder, the retrospective wonder of someone looking back at a beginning from a position they could not have predicted from it. He had arrived on a beach with no shoes and no context, and no idea what he was supposed to do, and he had found Enterprise and Kaga on a path through a forest, and from that point forward he had been building, and the building had produced, over 6 months, something that he was genuinely proud of in the way that mattered most, not the pride of accomplishment but the pride of rightness. The sense that what he had made was what it was supposed to be, and underneath the wonder was something else, smaller and more persistent, a kind of ache that was not grief exactly and not longing exactly but was something that lived in that territory, the awareness of the specific irreversibility of where he was, the knowledge that the beach was behind him and only forward was available. He had been carrying this since the beginning. He had gotten better at carrying it. But on the 31st day at Anchor Point, in the records room in the late evening, the carrying required acknowledgement. He was homesick. For the first home and for the second home both. For Co Academy and the Occult Research Club and the people there. For Iron Blood Anchorage and the harbor wall, and the way the base had felt when it had become his. For all of it, because loving things meant missing them when they were not present, and he had, over 6 months, loved a great deal. He sat with it. He did not try to manage it or organize it or turn it into something useful. He let it be what it was. Then he got up and went to find the people who were currently real and present and alive to him, because that was also what you did. He found Belfast in the operations center, which was where she was, and he sat down across from her at the table, and she looked at him with the quality that was hers, the knowledge that preceded language. Records room, she said. Yes. 31 days. I was due a difficult evening, he said. You were due several, she said. You have been extremely functional. That ends tonight, apparently. She rose and came around the table and sat beside him rather than across from him, which was its own language, and he felt the shift in the space that her proximity produced, the quality of being alongside rather than facing. Tell me, she said. He told her. Not the operational things, not the Anchor Point challenges, but the beach and the homesickness and the retrospective wonder and the ache that lived under both. He told her in the way he had learned to tell her things, directly and without managing the impression, because she had earned the directness, and he had learned to trust it. She listened with the complete quality of her attention. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. The ache does not go away, she said. I believe you know that. Yes. But the thing it aches for is also still present in you. The people you loved before are what made you the person who built what you built. They are not lost. They are structural. He absorbed this. It was accurate in a way that organized something he had been carrying without a framework for. Structural, he said. Yes. They are part of what you are made of. The making is permanent even when the proximity is not. He looked at her. In the operations center's quiet, late-night light, with everything that had happened in the past 6 months present between them in all the ways that mattered, she was precisely what she was, and he was grateful for her in a way that had no bottom. You are also structural, he said. She did not answer in words. She stayed where she was, beside him, and that was the answer, complete and sufficient. Chapter 29, What Builds? By the 6th week, Anchor Point had begun to feel like a place rather than a facility. The distinction was important, and he tracked it carefully, because the transition from facility to place was the same transition that had happened at Iron Blood Anchorage, and it produced the same changes. The quality of people moving through the space with less caution, the conversations that happened in corridors and at meal tables that were not about work, the particularities that developed between people who have spent enough time in close proximity to know each other's habits. Rune had, by the 6th week, become something like what Zuikaku had been in the early months at Iron Blood, the person most likely to appear at his door with a problem that had a solution attached, and the energy to implement it immediately. She had delivered the promised list of institutional problems on the Friday he had asked for it, and the list had been 17 items long and 14 of them had been accurate, and 3 of them had been accurate about something slightly different from what she had identified, which he had pointed out, and which she had examined and agreed with and revised. She came to him on a Thursday in the 6th week with an expression that was different from her usual focused professional energy, something underneath it that was less certain. The Eagle Union liaison, she said. The New Cleveland. I know her. She has been, Rune started, and then organized herself and started again. We have been working on the Northern Corridor coordination problem together, and I have found it, another pause, unexpectedly productive. He waited. I am not good at working with people I have not assessed, she said. I work well with people I have assessed and found capable. The assessment period is where I create difficulty. You are telling me you created difficulty for Cleveland during the assessment period? Yes. And she responded in a way that was, she considered, not what I expected. She did not become defensive. She became more specific. She told me what she needed from me to produce the outcome we were both working toward, and she said it plainly and without anger, and then continued working. What did you do? I did what she asked, Rune said. And the work improved. And I have been thinking about it since, because it is not how I understood the dynamic between someone being assessed and someone doing the assessing. He recognized the quality of what she was describing, the specific surprise of encountering a communication style that bypassed the dynamic you had been operating in and offered something simpler. She addressed the work rather than the relationship, he said. Which gave you something to respond to that was not about the relationship. Yes. Which resolved the relationship. Yes. Rune was quiet for a moment. You do that. I try to. It is, she said, with the particular deliberateness of someone saying something they have decided to say rather than something that came automatically, a more effective approach than the one I have been using. It has costs, he said. Being direct about what you need exposes what you need. That is not comfortable. No, she said. It is not. A pause. But the alternative is carrying the discomfort alone rather than sharing it toward a solution. Yes. She looked at him. I am going to practice it, she said, with the same tone she used when she committed to revisions of her own work, the tone of someone who had identified a variable that needed changing and was prepared to do the work of changing it. Tell me how it goes, he said. I will. The dinner happened in the 7th week, which was roughly when Issei had projected it would happen based on the rate at which Anchor Point was becoming a place rather than a facility. And like the dinner at the joint exercise, it was not planned by him but emerged from the same conditions that had produced the first one. Hood organized it, which surprised him until it did not, because Hood had been managing the facility for longer than anyone and understood what it needed in ways that no one who had arrived recently could fully see. She appeared at his office on a Wednesday with the expression of someone bringing a proposal they expect to be approved and that they have nonetheless organized a full presentation for, just in case. A facility dinner, she said. All staff. Friday evening. I have spoken with Belfast, and the kitchen can support it. Yes, he said. She blinked. That was faster than I expected. You don't need my approval for a dinner. You needed to tell me it was happening so I could attend and not conduct business. A pause. The last commander, she started, required approval for social gatherings, he finished. I know. It is in the administrative history you gave me in the first week. He looked at her. Hood. You have been keeping this facility running for 18 months without a settled commander. That required judgment I was not here to provide. I trust your judgment. You should not need my sign-off for things that are within your authority to decide. She looked at him with an expression that had the same quality as Rune's recalibration, but older, more established, carrying the weight of 18 months of a particular kind of loneliness that came from being competent in an unanchored environment. Thank you, she said, with a sincerity that was entirely stripped of administrative form. Thank you, he said, for keeping this place together long enough for there to be something for me to build on. She left. He thought she might be the most important person at Anchor Point who had not been on any briefing list he had been given, which was a category he now checked for instinctively in every new context, having learned that it was always populated. The dinner on Friday was the same as the joint exercise dinner in the ways that mattered and different in the ways that were specific to this place, this particular collection of people with their particular histories and careful interpersonal arrangements, and gradually relaxing caution. He sat in the middle of the room and ate the food and did not conduct business and listened to the noise of people who were becoming something together, and he thought, yes. This. Again. Still, Rune was talking to Cleveland, the new one, with an animation that was different from her professional intensity, looser, more exploratory, and across the room Belfast had produced the second pot of tea from somewhere and was distributing it with the quality she always had, present and purposeful and allowing herself, in the small way she had been allowing herself more since the harbor wall, to simply be in the room rather than serving it. Zuikaku was arguing with a Royal Navy tactical officer about formation doctrine and was wrong about one element, and did not yet know it, and he did not say so because she would find it herself within the next 5 minutes, and the finding was more valuable than the knowing. Shukaku was listening to the Sakura intelligence analyst, the exhausted institutional memory he had been told about, with the particular quality of attention that was also a form of acknowledgement, the listening that said, "What you know matters and I am here for all of it." He watched the analyst's posture shift over the course of 10 minutes from the careful containment of someone who had been doing everything alone for a long time towards something that was more open, more willing to take up space. Ayanami was near the window, which was where she always was, but she was talking to Kaga, and they were talking in the way that people talked when they had found someone who used the same economy of language and were discovering the relief of not having to translate. He held all of it, the whole room, with the particular quality of holding he had been developing since the beginning, not control but attention, the genuine attention that was, as he had told Bismarck, what everything ran on. Hood sat down across from him with a cup of tea and looked at the room with the expression of someone who had been waiting for it to be this way for a long time. 7 weeks, she said? Yes. The joint exercise here took 11 months. The last time there was a real dinner like this. He looked at her. What changed? She looked at him in the way that people looked when the answer to a question was the person asking it, and did not say anything, and he accepted the answer in the form it was offered. Chapter 30. What we carry forward. He wrote the letter on a Sunday morning in the 8th week, at the small desk in his quarters at Anchor Point, which was a different desk in a different room from the desk at Ironblood Anchorage, but had acquired, over 8 weeks, the same quality of being the place where important things were put into words. He told them about Anchor Point. He told them about Hood and Rune and the new Cleveland and the exhausted Sakura analyst whose name was Kawakazi and who had been keeping the institutional knowledge alive through 18 months of uncertainty with the particular tenacity of someone who understood that what she was holding mattered even when no one was asking for it. He told them about the dinner on Friday and about watching 7 weeks of careful distance collapse into something genuine in the span of an evening, and about how the collapse was not because anything had been done to produce it but because the conditions had been built, and the moment had arrived. He told Rias, "I am doing the thing you always said I could do, and the scale keeps growing, and I keep finding that what I know how to do is sufficient for each new scale, which I think means that what you knew was not about a specific size of challenge, but about a quality of approach that does not have a ceiling. I am grateful to understand that. I am grateful for you having known it before I did." He told Asia, "I am well. More than well. I am in a place that is becoming real to me and I am doing work that matters and the people around me are genuine, and I am learning things daily that I did not know I needed to learn. I am also still homesick, and I have stopped needing to resolve that tension, because you taught me, without meaning to teach me anything specific, that some things are allowed to be both. That being all right and missing something does not cancel either." He told Akino, "There is a woman here named Rune who has the same quality you had of looking at a system and seeing exactly where the flaw is and being willing to say so before she has fully calculated whether saying so is safe. She is learning, as you did, that the safety comes after the saying rather than before, and watching her learn it is one of the things I am most looking forward to about the months ahead." He told Kaneko, "The kitchen here is in good hands. That is all. You would know what it means." He told Yuto, "I have been thinking about what you said once, about the letters to people you would never see. About putting things into words because the words made them real enough to hold. I have been practicing that for 6 months and I am finding that the practice produces something unexpected, which is not just the holding of what I am writing to but the clearer understanding of who I am when I am writing it. The letters tell me who I am by showing me who I am writing to and why it matters. That is not what I expected. It is more than I expected." He told them all, "I am, in the fullest sense I know, home. Not in the sense that this is where I came from. In the sense that this is where I am, and I have made it mine, and the people in it are real to me, and the work has the quality that work has when it is the right work at the right time. I am home and I am also carrying you with me into it, always, in all the ways that matter." He folded the letter and held it for a moment, the familiar weight of the accumulated pages, the months of words that had built something he could not have planned but would not trade. Then he put them in his pocket, close enough to feel, and stood up. He found Belfast in the kitchen, because she was always in the kitchen in the mornings, and he came and stood beside her at the counter in the way that had become the way they began days, ordinary and complete. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she said. She was making breakfast for the facility. He picked up the appropriate implement and helped, because that was also the way they began days now, the work shared between them without ceremony, two people who were both entirely themselves and also something together that was more than either. Through the kitchen window Anchor Point was waking up, the morning light on the buildings, the harbor visible at the edge of the peninsula, the water calm and steady under the early sky. He could see figures moving between the buildings, the first people emerging into the morning with the particular purposeful quality of people who knew what they were doing, and why it mattered. 8 weeks. A beginning. He thought about all the beginnings. The beach. The forest path. Enterprise and Kaga and the strange shore. The harbor wall at Ironblood Anchorage, and the records room and the first staff meeting and the joint exercise and the assault and the morning after. The pier at the end of Act 4. The acceptance sent to Fleet Command on a Friday morning. This kitchen, these people, this morning. Every beginning had felt like this, large and slightly opaque, and every beginning had become, with time and work and the genuine attention he had learned was the only thing that actually built anything, something real and held and worth the cost. He did not know what was coming next. He had learned not to need to. What was coming next would require what everything had required, which was the willingness to show up and pay attention and take people seriously and do the work without needing it to be easier than it was. He could do that. He had been doing that. He would keep doing it. "Belfast," he said. "Yes. Thank you for being here." She was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet that meant she was receiving something and deciding how to hold it. "Thank you for bringing me," she said. "Always," he said. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. They were in the kitchen in the morning and the facility was waking up outside the window and the water was calm in the harbor and there was work to do, the good kind, the kind worth doing, the kind that started here and went forward into everything that was still to come. He stirred what needed stirring. She managed what needed managing. The morning continued. Chapter 31. The Intelligence. The intelligence arrived in 3 pieces, which was how the most consequential intelligence always arrived. Not in a single comprehensible form but in fragments that had to be assembled before the shape became visible. The first piece came from Shikaku on a Wednesday morning in the 11th week at Anchor Point, delivered in her customary 4-page summary format with the customary precision, but with a quality in the presentation that he had learned to read as her professional composure working harder than usual. The siren reconnaissance pattern had returned. Not the same configuration as before the multibase assault, but a new one, denser and more systematic, concentrated in a corridor that ran directly through Anchor Point's operational theater. "The pattern is different," she said, when he had read the summary. "Explain different." Before, the pattern was mapping. Identifying commandant control nodes and cataloging them. She paused. "This pattern is not mapping. It is measuring. They are assessing the strength of our response rather than the location of our assets." He set the summary down. "They learned from the last engagement." "Yes. They know where we are. They are now determining how strong we are, which means they are preparing for a second engagement." "That is the hypothesis I cannot yet confirm," she said. "But the pattern is consistent with that interpretation. Treat it as confirmed until contradicted," he said. "We will not be surprised by our own caution." She nodded and left, and he began the process of putting the first piece of intelligence in the place where things that required organized response went, which was different from the place where things requiring feeling went, and for the moment the organized response was what the situation needed. The second piece came from Ayanami on Thursday, delivered in the 7-word economy that was her standard for things that required compression. She said, "The measuring pattern has a target." That was the complete report, which was not imprecision but a very precise statement that contained more than it appeared to. He asked her to expand. She said, "The density of measurement activity is highest along the approaches to Anchor Point. Not to the bases that were hit before. To here." He held this. "They are building a case for a targeted assault on the Joint Coordination Command," he said. "Yes," she said. "That is the logical interpretation. Remove the coordination function and the individual bases cannot operate jointly. The network fails at the node. We are the node. Yes. He thanked her, and she left, and he stayed very still for a moment, not from fear but from the requirement of understanding something completely before acting on it, which was the discipline he had been building since the first weeks at Ironblood Anchorage. The third piece came from Enterprise on Friday evening, direct from Eagle Union Intelligence through the channel she maintained independently of the formal reporting structure. It confirmed the first two pieces and added a timeline. The measurement activity was accelerating at a rate consistent with a target date 6 to 8 weeks away. He called the senior staff meeting for Saturday morning. The meeting had a different quality from the equivalent meeting at Ironblood Anchorage, not because the stakes were different, they were comparably high, but because the people were different in a specific way. Some of them had been through the Ironblood assault, and some of them had not, and the ones who had not were encountering this caliber of intelligence for the first time. And the ones who had were carrying the memory of the night at 0314 as both a resource and a weight. He told them plainly, as he always did. He gave them the three pieces in the order they had arrived and the assembled picture they produced. He watched the room's response with the attention he always brought to rooms after consequential information. Rune was still, which was how she processed things that were genuinely large. The new Cleveland's expression did not change, which he had come to understand as her form of controlled engagement rather than absence of response. Hood was present in the room with a quality that was different from her administrative presence, something older and more settled, the presence of someone who had seen difficult things before and had learned how to stand in them. Zurkika said, into the silence that followed his account, 6 to 8 weeks. The upper end of the estimate, he said. We treat it as 6. The eastern approach is the most exposed, she said immediately, which was what she always did, which was to go directly to the operational problem because that was where she was most useful. The coordination between the faction patrol units is better than it was in Week 1 but not at the standard we need for a coordinated defense against a directed assault. What does it need to reach that standard? 4 weeks of joint training at the Intensity Kaga has been trying to get authorized for 6 weeks. She looked at him. Which is now authorized. Fully authorized, he said. Kaga, begin tomorrow. Kaga did not answer immediately. She was looking at the intelligence summary he had distributed, and when she looked up her expression had the quality that was hers when she had assessed the situation completely and arrived at a clear conclusion. The training can be ready, she said. The units can be ready. The question is whether the coordination structure above the unit level is ready to direct them under real conditions. That is, said Rune, with the deliberateness that meant she was saying something important, the liaison structure reform. My revision. It is operational for routine coordination. I do not know if it is operational for this. Tell me what it needs, he said. She told him. It required 3 things, each of which was specific and each of which was addressable within the timeline if addressed immediately. He addressed them immediately, assigning each one before she had finished speaking, which produced the same quality in the room that it always produced, the quality of people recalibrating their understanding of what was possible. Shikaka said, the intelligence integration system. The analytical function is complete. The real-time update pathway is not. How long? 2 weeks. You have one. I will need Kawakazi's full time for that week. She has it. Tell her I said so. Shikaka nodded with the quality that was her version of Zuikaka's decisive nod, same meaning, different register. Belfast said, from her end of the table, with the precision she always used for things she had already organized in her mind before saying them. The secondary command node at Anchor Point has the same function as the secondary communications hub at Ironblood Anchorage. It maintained our function during the last assault. I have been improving its capacity since our arrival. It will be at full operational readiness in 10 days. He looked at her. You've been doing this independently. I anticipated it would be necessary, she said. You would have authorized it if asked. I did not want to draw your attention to a preparation that was not yet complete. The room was quiet for a moment with the particular quality that arrived when something unexpected turned out to be a resource rather than a surprise. Thank you, he said. It is what I do, she said, which was her way of receiving gratitude, and he had stopped trying to change it because it was accurate. Enterprise, who had not spoken during the meeting, said, At its close, the Eagle Union will send additional assets if formally requested. I can have a response within 72 hours. Request it, he said. An enterprise. Yes. Thank you. For the third piece. She looked at him with the gray eyes that saw what was there. It is what I do, she said, and the echo of Belfast's words was precise and deliberate, and he held both of them close. Chapter 32. The Preparation. The next 4 weeks were the most intense sustained period he had experienced since the joint exercise, which had itself been the most intense period he had experienced since arriving in this world, which meant they were the most demanding weeks of his life measured by any standard he currently had access to. He did not find this alarming. He found it clarifying, in the way that high demand always clarified, stripping away the things that could wait and leaving only the things that could not. Kaga's joint training began the Monday after the Saturday meeting and ran at the intensity she had been requesting for 6 weeks, which turned out to be the exact intensity required because Kaga had been calculating the requirement since her first week at Anchor Point and had been waiting for the authorization to act on it. The units that had been training separately began training together, and the first sessions had the expected quality of people who knew their own methods and were discovering that other people's methods were different in ways both minor and significant. He watched a session on the second day and saw the friction points clearly. They were not, in most cases, about capability. They were about assumption, the implicit operating assumptions each faction's units carried that had never needed to be stated because everyone around them shared them, and that became visible as obstacles only when people who did not share them tried to work alongside. He raised this with Kaga that evening. I know, she said. I have been running sessions specifically designed to surface the assumptions. The units do not enjoy them. Is that a problem? No. Discomfort at the assumption level is the correct experience. It means the assumptions are being examined rather than carried forward unexamined. The discomfort will pass when the examination produces a new shared understanding. How long? 1 week of sessions at this frequency. After that, the discomfort becomes productive rather than resistant. He trusted her assessment, which was the right response because her assessment was built on genuine expertise and careful observation. He told her so. She received it with the quality that meant she noted it and moved on, which was exactly right. Rune's revised liaison structure cleared its first real test on the Thursday of the second week, when a genuine coordination gap in the northern corridor required a real-time cross-faction response rather than a scheduled protocol exchange. He watched the response from the command center and noted the point at which it could have failed under the old structure and did not fail under the new one, and afterward he went to find Rune and told her exactly what he had seen. She was quiet for a moment. Then, the Eagle Union liaison was the variable I was most uncertain about. Cleveland's. She held, he said. She held before I thought she would be ready to. People are often ready before the structure they are in allows them to be, he said. You built a structure that let her be ready when she was ready. That is the point. Rune looked at him with the expression he had come to recognize as her version of a lesson landing, the particular stillness of someone integrating something that had just become concrete. Yes, she said. That is exactly the point. Shikaka finished the real-time intelligence integration pathway in 6 days rather than 7, which did not surprise him by the 3rd month of working with her because Shikaka's estimates were always conservative in the way of someone who had learned that promising less and delivering more was a more reliable practice than the reverse. Kawakaze, who had spent a week in sustained collaboration with Shikaku and emerged from it looking simultaneously exhausted and more alive than he had seen her, came to him on the 7th day with an expression that was making a decision about itself. Commander, she said. Kawakaze, the week. She paused. I have not worked at that pace with someone who understood what I was doing in, she stopped. For a long time. Shikaku is extraordinarily capable, he said. Yes. A pause. But it is not only that. This place, in the past 11 weeks, has become something I did not expect it to become. What did you expect? Another period of managing without certainty. Another commander who would be adequate, and then leave. She looked at him with the direct quality of someone who has decided to say a thing, and has organized the words. I am no longer managing without certainty. I wanted to say that, because I think you should know it. He held this carefully. Kawakazi had been at Anchor Point for 2 years and had held the institutional knowledge together through 18 months of ungoverned transition. What she was saying was not a small thing. Thank you for staying, he said. Through the 18 months. The work you did keeping this place coherent was the foundation I built on. I should have said that sooner. She was quiet in the way of someone receiving something they had not expected and did not quite know how to hold. I did not think anyone would see it as foundation, she said. It felt more like she searched, keeping a light on. In case someone came. Someone came, he said. Because the light was on. She left. He sat for a moment with the image, the light kept on through a long uncertain time, and thought about all the people who did that kind of work, the patient-holding work that made possible everything that came after, and was grateful in a way that was specific and complete. The conversation with Belfast on the evening of the 3rd week was one that he had been aware was approaching, in the way that important conversations had a quality of approaching that was different from unexpected ones, a gradual accumulation of the right conditions until the conditions were complete. They were in the operations center, which was where they often were in the evenings, the facility's systems running their quiet cycles around them. He had finished the day's final report. She had finished the supply chain review. The space between task and rest was the space where honest things happened. You are not sleeping enough, she said. I know. You have not been sleeping enough since the Saturday meeting. I know that too. She looked at him with the quality that was hers, the knowledge that preceded language. Tell me what it is. He thought about how to say it accurately. At Ironblood Anchorage, the assault was a test I had prepared for. I had built the preparation and I had reasonable confidence in it. The preparation held. He paused. Here, the preparation is real and I have confidence in it. But I am also aware that this time they know where we are and what we did before, and they have been measuring specifically to determine what we cannot withstand. And you are not certain your preparation accounts for what you cannot withstand. No preparation accounts for everything you cannot withstand. By definition. Then the uncertainty is about something else. He was quiet for a moment. The people, he said. I know what was at stake at Ironblood Anchorage, and I know what it felt like after, when everyone was all right. I know that what is at stake here is the same quality of thing but larger, more people I know, more people I have come to. He stopped. Care about, she said. Yes. The larger the thing you have built, the larger what can be lost. She was quiet. He waited. Yes, she said finally. That is the cost of building. She looked at him steadily. But you have also built the most robust preparation this facility has had in its history. The people here are more capable than they were 11 weeks ago. The structure is more coherent. The training is more real. She paused. The cost of building is not a reason not to build. It is a reason to build well. I know, he said. I know that. I still carry the cost. I know you do, she said. I am not asking you to stop carrying it. I am telling you that I see it, and that I think you are carrying it in the right way, which is to acknowledge it rather than suppress it, and then do the work anyway. He looked at her. You are very good at this. At what? Saying the thing that the situation requires rather than the thing that is comfortable. I learned it, she said, with the quality that meant the learning had come from somewhere specific. He did not ask where. He knew the answer was partly him, and he did not need her to say it. Belfast. Yes. Whatever happens. You are, he started, and then found the accurate words, the best part of all of this. Not the most important part. The best part. I want you to know that. The operations center was very quiet. You are the best part of this for me as well, she said, with the precision she always used for the things she meant most completely. I want you to know that with the same clarity. He did know it. He had known it for a while, but it was different to hear it said precisely, and the difference was the whole of what saying things plainly was for. Get some sleep, she said. Yes, he said. I mean it. I know you mean it. Good night, Issei. Good night, Belfast. He slept. It was, for the first time in 3 weeks, a real sleep, the kind that came from having said the thing that needed saying into a space where it was received. Chapter 33, Known Variables. The message from Fleet Command in the 5th week brought news that he received with the particular feeling of the unexpected that turns out, on examination, to have been entirely predictable. Cleveland was coming. The original one. She was bringing a reinforcement unit from the Eagle Union as part of the formal asset request Enterprise had placed, and she was leading it personally, which Fleet Command's communication noted in the neutral administrative language of official correspondence, and which communicated, underneath the neutral language, that Cleveland had volunteered and the volunteering had been accepted. He wrote her a message that was one sentence long. "I am glad it is you." She replied in one sentence, "I know. See you in a week." Sheffield's name was in the second communication, the Royal Navy Contingent. She was the liaison coordinator for the Royal Navy assets being deployed to Anchor Point in support of the defense, and the communication noted that she had reviewed the coordination protocols and had 4 questions. He wrote back, "I look forward to the questions." She replied, "They are better questions than the 12. I have had more time to prepare." He read this and felt something that was the specific warmth of people who had built a real thing and were returning to build more of it, and he held it for a moment before he put it in the folder of things that were good, and went back to work. Cleveland arrived on a Tuesday and was, on the pier, exactly herself, the wide smile and the no-nonsense quality and the particular directness that went directly to what mattered. She shook his hand and said, "Anchor Point. Bigger than I expected. It has grown into itself," he said. 11 weeks? 11 weeks. She looked at him. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "The thing where you build things in the time it normally takes people to unpack." She shook her head, not with criticism but with the affectionate exasperation of someone who had been watching a pattern long enough to have a name for it. "Where do you need me?" "Eastern Approach Defense," he said. "The coordination between Kaga's joint training units and the patrol assets. There's a timing gap in the handoff that needs someone who knows how to read a fluid engagement and adjust in real time. That's what I do." "I know." She looked at him steadily. "You called for the assets because you needed the assets. You got me specifically because the assets need leadership I trust," he said. "And because you have done this with me before, under real conditions, and I know what you are when things are moving." She was quiet for a moment. The pier was around them, the harbor behind them, the familiar geometry of a base receiving reinforcements with the organized activity that it required. "What happened at Iron Lodge?" she said, "after the exercise?" "After we left." He told her about the assault. The 31 minutes. The command function that did not go down. She listened with the quality of someone who was both professionally assessing and personally engaged, the two things running simultaneously without conflict. "You held," she said. "We held. Same here?" "Same here." "Then let's get to work," she said, and picked up her kit and walked toward the facility with the stride that had not changed at all, purposeful and uncomplicated and entirely itself. Sheffield arrived the following day with 4 questions, which she presented in the coordination briefing with the organized precision that was entirely her own. 2 of the questions identified gaps in the protocol that he had not fully addressed. One identified a gap that Rune had identified and already fixed. One identified something that was not a gap but a feature that looked like a gap from the outside, and he explained the feature, and she examined his explanation with the evaluating attention she brought to everything and said, "That is actually better than what I would have proposed." "I will note that in the record," he said. "Please do," she said, which was exactly what he had expected her to say, and the expectation felt like a form of knowledge, the specific knowledge that came from having built something real with someone. He found Zuikaku and Cleveland in the Tactical Operations Center on the 3rd day of the reinforcement integration, which was where he would have looked for both of them, working through the Eastern Approach timing gap with the combined focus of 2 people who both knew exactly what they were talking about, and were genuinely enjoying the conversation because of it. He stood in the doorway for a moment, and watched them work. They had the quality of people who had not previously met but who recognized each other's competence immediately and had gone from recognition directly to collaboration without the usual period of careful positioning. Cleveland was drawing approach vectors on the display with the fluid confidence of someone who could do it in her sleep. Zuikaku was asking questions about the specific behavior of Eagle Union units and fluid engagements, not to test Cleveland but because she genuinely needed the information to build a coherent joint protocol. He had not introduced them. He had told Zuikaku that Cleveland was arriving and what her strengths were, and Zuikaku had apparently decided the rest for herself. Cleveland looked up and saw him in the doorway. "Your protocol rebuild," she said, gesturing at Zuikaku, "is better than anything the Eagle Union has for the Eastern Approach Corridor. It accounts for joint asset behavior," Zuikaku said, with the particular tone she used when someone had identified something she had worked hard to achieve. "The existing protocols were all single faction. Where did you learn to think like that?" Zuikaku glanced at Issei. He said nothing. "Somewhere that required it," Zuikaku said, which was accurate, and said everything it needed to without requiring elaboration. He left them to it. Behind him he heard Cleveland saying something about the third phase deployment window and Zuikaku responding with the particular animation she had when the work was exactly right, and he carried the sound of it with him down the corridor as a specific form of gratitude. The conversation between Shukaku and Sheffield happened without his involvement, which was how the most important conversations usually happened, the ones that took place between people who had found each other without requiring a bridge. He heard about it from Shukaku, who came to him on a Thursday evening with the quality that meant she had processed something significant, and was ready to report it. "Sheffield and I have been comparing intelligence integration methodologies," she said. "I had not arranged that." "No." She found the analytical integration system and asked to review it. I showed her. She had observations. "What kind?" "The kind that improved it," Shukaku said, with the quality that meant she was being entirely honest without any cost to her professional confidence, the quality of someone who had learned that being improved was different from being inadequate. She identified a cross-referencing gap in the real-time update pathway. The gap would not have caused failure under normal conditions but would have introduced latency under high-volume conditions. Exactly the conditions of a directed assault. How long to fix it? Sheffield and I addressed it this afternoon. It is fixed. He looked at her. The two of you worked on it together. We have compatible working styles, she said, with the slight quality of someone acknowledging something that had surprised them pleasantly. We both prefer to understand the problem completely before proposing solutions. We both prefer precise language. We both find it unnecessary to perform anything. He thought about what he had said to Shukaku in the records room at Ironblood Anchorage, about how she would have a conversation with Sheffield. He had said it about a different Sheffield, or rather he had said it imagining Sheffield in the abstract, and he found that the specific Sheffield and the imagined one were close enough that the prediction had been more accurate than predictions usually were. "I am glad," he said simply. "Yes," she said. "So am I." Chapter 34:0214. The siren assault on Anchor Point came at 0214. Not 0314, as it had come at Ironblood Anchorage. He noted the difference in the same part of his mind that noted operational variables, because pattern changes were informative, and the change here suggested either that they had adjusted their estimate of human vulnerability windows or that the assault was timed to a different parameter. He did not have time to determine which. The command center was operational when he arrived, which was what happened when the preparation was real, and the display showed 15 confirmed contacts and 3 approach vectors, a larger force than the Ironblood assault and more geometrically complex, which confirmed the intelligence assessment that they had learned from the previous engagement. More contacts. Multiple vectors. The communications array as the primary target vector, and the command node as the secondary. The same logic, the same goal, executed with greater sophistication. Contingency alpha modified, he said, which was the protocol they had built specifically for this scenario, the version that accounted for the multi-vector assault pattern. The room moved. Cleveland's voice from the eastern position, already engaged, already reading the fluid situation in real time and adjusting in exactly the way he had brought her here to do. Zuikaku's voice from the Joint Tactical Operations Center, running the cross-faction coordination at a speed and precision that would have been impossible 11 weeks ago, and was possible now because Kaga had spent those weeks building the readiness that made it possible. Kaga's voice from the Joint Training Sector, which had been organized as a secondary command position for exactly this engagement, running the unit coordination with the calm that was entirely hers. Shukaku's voice from the Intelligence Hub, feeding real-time analysis of the assault pattern into the command decision loop with the speed that the integration system's updated pathway made possible. Sheffield's voice alongside hers, The cross-referencing gap that had been fixed 3 days ago running clean under high-volume conditions exactly as they had known it would need to. Rune's voice from the Liaison Coordination Center, the reformed structure that had been designed to hold under real conditions holding under real conditions. Ayanami's voice from the observation post, 7 words at a time, each one precise and necessary, the information that changed the picture arriving in the exact form needed to update the command decision. Enterprise at his right, silent in the way that was her version of full presence, reading the display with the eyes that saw what was there and reporting it when the report was needed and not before. Belfast's voice from the secondary command node, the Tendi preparation that had been running since before he knew it was running, every system at full operational readiness. The communications function uninterrupted at the first contact and at every contact after. He called adjustments at the 2-minute mark, the 5-minute mark, the 9-minute mark. Each one was a response to something the assault did that the preparation had anticipated as possible and built a response to. The preparation had been thorough. The preparation held. At 13 minutes, Cleveland's unit closed the eastern approach vector. At 19 minutes, Zuikaku's joint protocol absorbed a formation break that sent 2 contacts toward the harbor rather than the array and redirected assets to intercept before the break had fully developed, because Zuikaku had run the harbor break variant enough times in enough contexts that she could read its beginning before its middle. At 26 minutes, the secondary vector aimed at the command node encountered the defense that had been established specifically for it, a layered response that the measuring pattern had apparently not fully accounted for, and the contacts pulled back rather than pressing through. At 34 minutes, the last confirmed contact withdrew. The command center was quiet with the quiet that followed real things. He looked at the status display. Communications array, intact. Command node, intact. All prepared redundancies, not required. Personnel, 4 injuries, none critical. He breathed. Secure from battle stations, he said. Begin assessment protocol. Good work. All of you. Everyone in this facility, and every position outside it. Enterprise said very quietly, so that only he could hear. Clean. Clean, he agreed. The next 2 hours were the assessment protocol, which he had run before and which ran with the efficient quality of something that had been practiced and knew its own shape. Damage assessment, personnel check, system status, communications to Fleet Command and to the faction commands that had contributed assets. Cleveland came into the command center at the hour mark with the particular energy of someone who has just done something demanding and is still running on it. She shook his hand without preamble and said, "The eastern approach vector is clear and we have 2 hours before the patrol cycle resets." "What do you need?" "Rest," he said. "Your unit performed exactly what it was here to perform." "Rest." She looked at him with the expression of someone who knows they are being sent to rest and is going to go but wants to register that they are not tired. "The timing gap in the handoff," she said. "It's fixed." Zuikaku found it at the 4-minute mark and adjusted in real time. "You should note that in the record." "Already noted," he said. She almost said something else and then did not say it, which was unusual for Cleveland, and he waited. "Good command," she said finally. "The whole thing. Not just the engagement. The 11 weeks of preparation that made the engagement what it was." She paused. "I wanted to say it in person because I think you deserve to hear it in person." He held this. "Thank you, Cleveland. You're welcome, Commander." She left. Sheffield came 15 minutes later with a single observation about the intelligence integration performance during the engagement. The observation was correct, and it pointed toward a refinement that could be implemented before the next assessment cycle. He told her so, and she nodded with the precise satisfaction of someone whose analysis has been confirmed. "The cross-referencing fix," she said. "It held. It held. Shikaka was right that it would have introduced latency." "Yes. I am glad I reviewed the system." "I am also glad," he said. "I should have reviewed it myself." She looked at him with the evaluating attention. "You have a large command. You cannot review everything yourself. That is why the people I trust need to review what I cannot." "Yes," she said. "Which is what happened." A pause that had a quality in it, something slightly warmer than her usual register. "The network works, Commander Hayato. Not just the tactical structure. The network of people. It works." He thought about Nagato saying almost exactly that, in different words, after the Iron Blood debrief. He thought about what it meant that the same observation had arrived twice from different people who had no knowledge of each other's assessment. Thank you, Sheffield. Yes, she said and left. Chapter 35, Morning at Anchor Point. Dawn at Anchor Point on the morning after the assault had the particular quality of mornings that followed difficult nights, everything slightly more vivid, slightly more itself, the light on the water and the buildings and the faces of the people moving through the facility with the quality of people who had come through something and were glad to be on the other side. He did his rounds. He found Rune in the Liaison Coordination Center, running the post-engagement protocol with the focused efficiency that was her standard, and he stopped and told her that the reformed liaison structure had performed exactly what it was reformed to perform and that the performance under real conditions was more important than any simulation result. She received this with the stillness that was how she received things that mattered and then said, I want to write a methodology document. The process of building it. Not just the structure itself. So that the next person who has to do this has a starting point. Write it, he said. I will read it and sign it and send it to Fleet Command as a formal resource. She looked at him. That is more formal than I expected. It is the appropriate level of formal for work that is that useful, he said. Write it the way you would want to find it. She nodded and went back to work, and he thought she would write an excellent document because she approached everything the same way, completely and precisely and without performing anything. He found Kawakazi in the intelligence hub, organizing the engagement data with Shikaku, and both of them had the quality of people who had been awake for most of the night, and were running on the particular energy that important work produced when the work had gone well. He told them both what he had told Rune, that the intelligence integration system had performed under the exact conditions it was built for, and that the refinement Sheffield had identified would be implemented, and that their names would be in the performance record. Kawakazi looked at him. My name. Your name, he said. The system would not have been ready without your week of full-time work on the pathway. That is a fact, and facts should be in records. She was quiet with the quality he had seen on the day he had told her she was the foundation, the quality of someone receiving something they had not expected and did not quite know how to hold. She was getting better at holding it. He thought she would keep getting better. He found Zuikaku and Cleveland in the eastern position, which they had not yet vacated despite the engagement being over, because they were apparently still working through the details of the timing gap fix, and neither of them was inclined to stop working on something that interested them simply because the immediate requirement for it had passed. He did not interrupt them. He stood in the doorway for a moment and watched two people who had built a genuine working relationship in less than 2 weeks doing exactly what they were built to do, and then he went on. He found Kaga on the training yard perimeter, which was where she was, running her own post-engagement assessment in the methodical way she did everything. She stopped when she saw him. The joint units, she said, performed. Yes. A pause. The assumption surfacing sessions. For weeks ago I was not certain they were producing the result I needed. Last night I saw the result. What did you see? Units from 4 factions making real-time decisions that accounted for each other's behavior without requiring coordination signals. They knew how the person beside them would move. She looked at the training yard with an expression that was, for Kaga, a form of satisfaction, quiet and certain. That is what I was trying to build. You built it, he said. We built it, she said, which was not her usual response, which was usually to accept what he said and move on. The shift in the response was small and significant. Yes, he agreed. We built it. He found Ayanami at the eastern pier, her place, as the light came fully over the water. She was looking at the harbor with the stillness that was simply being present in the world rather than holding herself against it. He came and stood beside her. You slept, she said? A little. Between the 2-hour mark and dawn. That is more than last night. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then I have been writing, she said. The letters to the earlier version of myself. How is it? She has more to say than I expected. We are still in conversation. A pause. She told me something last week that I have been thinking about since. She said that the version of herself that was frightened was also the version that was paying the most attention. That the attention was a response to the fear but also something more than the fear. That what came out of the fear was not the fear itself but the attention, and the attention was worth keeping. He thought about this. The fear taught her to see. Yes. And the seeing stayed even when the fear became manageable. She looked at the water. I think that is what happened to me. I learned to see because I had to, and then I kept seeing because it turned out to be valuable independent of the original necessity. It is valuable, he said. Everything you have brought to this work because of that quality. I know, she said, in a direct way that was not arrogance but simply acknowledgement, the same way she acknowledged everything true. I am not modest about it anymore. The earlier version was modest about it because modesty felt safer. I have decided that accurate is more useful than modest. That is a significant conclusion. The letters helped, she said. You were right that they would. I was right that they might, he said. You were the one who found out. She turned and looked at him with the direct attention that was her most complete form of presence. You are, she said, choosing each word with the care she always gave to things that mattered, the reason I have been becoming someone I wanted to be. I want you to know that precisely. He held it carefully, exactly as she had offered it. Thank you, he said. Precisely. She turned back to the water. They stood together in the morning. He found Belfast in the kitchen, which was where she was, and she was making breakfast for the facility in the ordinary purposeful way that was entirely hers, and he came and stood beside her in the way that had become the way he began days. And she did not say anything, and he did not say anything for a moment because nothing needed to be said yet. Then she said, 34 minutes? Yes. Clean. She was quiet for a moment. I want to tell you something, she said. Tell me. Last night, in the secondary command node, during the engagement, I was not afraid. She said it with the particular deliberateness of someone saying something they have examined carefully before saying. Not because the stakes were low. Because I trusted the preparation and I trusted the people and I trusted you. And that trust was not, she paused, it was not something I had before. The trusting without reserve. The willingness to put the full weight of my confidence in another person and in the thing we had built together. He listened. I have been, she said, very careful for a long time. About what I put weight on. Careful in ways that were appropriate responses to specific experiences and that became habits beyond those experiences. And somewhere in the past, she paused, considering, 7 months, the habits have changed. Changed how? I trust more easily. Not carelessly. Carefully, with reason, in the way that good trust is built. But I trust. She looked at him. And I wanted you to know that. Because it is not a small thing, and you are a significant part of why it happened, and you should know it. He was quiet for a long moment. Belfast. Yes. You did the work of changing. I only gave you a context where the work felt worth doing. That is not a small thing either, she said. No, he agreed. It's not. She went back to what she was doing, and he went back to what he was doing beside her, and the kitchen had the quality it always had, warm and purposeful and holding something real without requiring it to be named. Through the window, Anchor Point was coming fully alive in the morning. The harbor was calm. The ship sat steady. The people who had been through a difficult night were moving through the facility with the particular quality of people who had done what they came to do and were glad of it. He thought, this is what I have been building. This specific morning, in this specific place, with these specific people. All of it held, all of it working, all of it real. He thought about writing the letter tonight. He thought he would have a great deal to say. He thought he would tell them, we held again. Under harder conditions, with more at stake, against an enemy that had learned from before. We held because the preparation was real and the people were ready and the trust was genuine. And the trust was genuine because it had been built carefully over months by everyone in this facility doing the work of building it. He would tell them, I am still myself. After 7 months and 2 worlds and everything that has happened in both of them, I am still the person you knew, made larger by everything I have encountered, not changed in the ways that mattered but grown in every direction from the center that you helped build. He would tell them, I love you. With the fullness of someone who has learned what love is across multiple contexts, and found that it does not diminish with expansion but compounds, the way that good things compound, each instance making the whole larger rather than dividing it. He would tell them, I am home. Still. Again. Always. He stirred the rice. Beside him, Belfast moved in her precise and purposeful way. The morning continued through the window, vivid and real and entirely itself. He let it be what it was. He let it be enough. He let it be everything.